There's really no such thing as an unanswered prayer. God responds to our prayers based on, first of all, His word. He's never going to say or do anything that contradicts His own words. Also, is based on our faith. And when I speak of faith, it's more than just saying I believe God or I believe in God. Faith is a belief that shapes your actions. If you truly have faith and believe in God, you're going to act like you believe God and you're going to obey Him. God sees us, He feels us, He's close to us, and God is always faithful. Therefore, any communication with Him must be from faith to faith. So we have to be faithful as well. So no matter what season you're in your life, no matter what's going on, no matter what it may look like or feel like, God is there. He sees you. He hears you. So whatever you do, just hold on. Don't let go. And whatever you do, hold on to your faith and keep believing God for it. Oh my goodness, I am so excited to be back sharing the Sunday school lesson with you. I am not going to go through a long, drawn out story about where I've been or what I've been through, but I will say this. You know how they say, I don't look like what I've been through? Well, I don't look like what I'm going through. God is faithful. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for reaching out to me, and let's get right to this lesson. This week's text comes from the Gospel according to St. Luke in the first chapter. And here we see the announcement of the coming of John the Baptist. And this chapter starts off talking about his parents, Zacharias and Elizabeth. Zacharias was a priest, and it says that Elizabeth was one of the daughters of Aaron, which would make both of them part of the Levite tribe. And they got together and the text calls them righteous and blameless. And those are two wonderful words to describe anyone. And I want to point out something here because it says that they were well stricken in years, they were old, and they did not have a child because Elizabeth was barren. Now, when you look at that, nowadays, if a woman chooses not to have kids, nobody really cares. But back then, being barren was something that was really looked down upon because essentially the main purpose of a woman was to bear children. And if you couldn't do that, you were pretty much worthless. So I want to really put into perspective what Zacharias and Elizabeth had to go through for all of these years. Yet they remained righteous and blameless. And right there, that's the lesson for us because even though we may be having a hard time, even though things may not be the way we want them, that does not give us an excuse to lose faith. And not only that, it says that Zacharias was at the temple executing his priestly office. So even though he dealt with not having a child and being old and his wife being barren, he did not allow it to hinder him from doing what God had assigned him to do. That's another huge lesson because sometimes when things are not going the way we want them to go, when we don't have what we want, when we don't have what we need, we allow it to distract us from what God has called us to do. But no matter what is going on in your life, if you can have the faith to believe God and trust God, you will obey Him, even though you have a whole lot going on in your life and that you're struggling. You'll be able to serve God and obey God in the midst of a struggle. So it says that Zacharias was there in the temple and an angel appeared to him. And the first thing that the angel said to Zacharias was that your prayer has been heard. God has heard your prayer. God has answered your prayer. See, sometimes we have something that's been bothering us for a long time. It's been wrong for a long time. We've been suffering for a long time and going through it and it feels like it's never going to end and we don't even know if it's going to get better. And God has not forgotten. God sees, God knows and he's right there with you, and God has a plan. That's why faith is so important, to have the faith to believe God and to trust his plan for your life, because this angel started to tell Zacharias about the son that he was going to have and how he would be a forerunner for Jesus, the very Son of God, and how this baby was going to be filled with the Holy Ghost from the mother's womb. See, had the baby been born in Elizabeth's 30s or 20s or in her childbearing years, it wouldn't have been a miracle to it. Okay. But now we have this miraculous birth with this couple who are too old to have children. They're going to have this baby miraculously, and the baby is going to be born with the Holy Ghost, and it is going to do such a great work, to the extent that now, over 2,000 years later, I'm here telling you about John the Baptist. And not only did the angel tell Zacharias what John would do and who he would be, he gave him very specific instructions concerning how to raise him. He shouldn't drink strong drink, and he even told him what the baby's name should be, and that his name would indeed be John. And that is so important, because God knew that he could trust Zacharias and Elizabeth with this assignment, because they were righteous and they were faithful and they were upright and blameless. We want to live our lives in a way where God can trust us with his assignments. And sometimes that means having patience. Sometimes that means waiting. Sometimes that means it looking like everybody has what we don't have, and everybody is passing us, and we're left behind or left out or forgotten about. But we've got to remember that God is always mindful of us and trust his plan. Now, even though Zacharias was a righteous man and God trusted him and Elizabeth with this wonderful task of being the parents of John the Baptist, he made a mistake. And because he made the mistake of doubting the angel, he had to be held accountable, which is why he was not allowed to speak until the baby was born. And this is such a powerful lesson about trusting God, about living right, about being worthy, about being in a position where God can pick you to carry out his assignment. And now, more than ever before, this was leading up to the first coming of Christ. Now we are rapidly approaching the second coming of Christ. And I want to ask you a question. Are you in position for God to use you in preparation for the second coming of his son? That's my goal. As I look around, as I look at everything that's happening, the news and everything that's happening, I really am just sitting back watching all of this saying, you know what? I'm going to live right and wait for Jesus to return. And I want to share the gospel with as many people as I can before Jesus returns, because I want as many people saved as can. Like John the Baptist, he was a voice crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord. I want to be a similar voice, because this world that we live in right now, we live in civilized cities and houses and stuff, but sometimes it feels like a wilderness to me. And I want to be that voice telling people Jesus is coming. Get ready, get ready, get ready, because Jesus is coming. And this is such a beautiful lesson. And I'm so glad I came back at this time of year, because we're leading up to one of the most beautiful times of the year, which is Christmas. I know people say that this is not his birthday, this is not when he was born. I really don't care. Anytime I have the opportunity to celebrate Jesus, I'm all over it. So again, we want to believe God. We want to trust God. And again, whatever you do, especially in this time, don't let go of your faith.